Success, it has been said, is not the absence of failure, but going from failure to failure without any loss of enthusiasm. My name is BJ Gramillion, and I am the host of the Rush to Fail podcast. This podcast was created to highlight and learn from others who have turned their failures into success in hopes that it will both inspire and encourage others to push through their trials and to not be afraid of short-term failure. Our mantra on this show is to fail often, fail forward, and rush to fail. Welcome to the Rush to Fail podcast. I'm your host, BJ Gramillion, and today I have Mark Mabry, my good friend, on the show with us today, and could not be more excited. In fact, Mark, fun fact with him, he was actually the first person that I interviewed on a podcast that I started back at my prior company in Arizona about 2 or 3 years ago. He was nice enough to come on. I was like, who is the coolest, most famous person that I can think of right now that would actually say yes? And he was the first one that came to mind. And so I was like, you know what? We're going to run this back if he'll be willing to come back on the show. And so, Mark, thanks for coming back once again.
It's an honor to be here, BJ. Seriously, like, you're a good conversation, recorded or not. So I'll take the
No, you know what? And
opportunity.
that's what I love about, and you guys will all pick up on this. It'll be very evident very quickly. Mark is one of like the coolest dudes, most genuine guys to talk to. He's like the dude's dude that everyone wishes they were like. You know, he's.
Oh,
I don't know if you have a flaw. I have not found it yet. Not that I'm looking.
My wife's in the other room. I could, she could give you a list. I got my kids here. Bring her in. Say, let's list the flaws.
Yeah, no, he just is genuinely an amazing guy. And so I know Mark from Arizona, and my in-laws were gracious enough to have him or pay for him to take the wedding photography and videography for our wedding. And so we still watch that, by the way. We force our kids to watch it every anniversary. We put that in the DVD player and dust it off for that one event, you know. But we appreciate you. We'll never forget you for that reason. So there's a lot to Mark's story, and we'll obviously get into that. But he's probably best known for Reflections of Christ. And if you are not yet following his Instagram and have seen any of his photography, you need to go check it out because he does an incredible job. He's got a gift for photography, and so we'll get into that a little bit more. But in fact, how about we do this? Let's just maybe take us back to the Arizona days, because you were born and raised there, right?
Born and raised. Yep.
All right, cool. So what got you into photography? Because you were into sports and all that stuff. I know you played football, right?
I played football. I was going to play college football there for a second, but ASU was no place for a married walk-on with a kid on the way. And so that very quickly, when I realized I had to pay bills, and it wasn't like the days of NIL, you know, not that I would have gotten any anyway. But I loved that. But, you know, when, like, my parents had a friend, I was just looking for a job. Right? I was 21, just looking for a job. My parents had a friend who was a photographer, and they're like, hey, to kill some time, you could at least go schlep this guy's bag around and like help him out, right? Because he was paying well. $15 an hour back in 1997 was pretty good. You know,
that's
like
not bad.
Double minimum wage. I had no college education at that point. And so I was carrying it around. One day he's like, dude, if you could learn how to shoot, I'll pay you $125 an hour to go shoot receptions. I was like, well, I don't really want to be a photographer, but hey, I'll do it. And so he's like, but you got to buy your own gear. So I borrowed 12 grand and went and got, it was my dad. He's so kind, like loaned me 12 grand and I paid it back. We went and got camera gear that I just got a list of gear. I had no idea how to use it. And he goes, and then I started to pay attention to what he was doing. So I started to shoot receptions for him, and I'd made, you know, $125 an hour. That's a great way to go spend 4 hours on a Saturday night when you're young and newlywed and just needing money. And then it just kind of took, and it was natural. And at the time I was going to ASU, I was studying pre-law. I was a junior, and September 11th happened. And I watched it go down on TV, and I went to ASU that day, kind of just foggy headed, not realizing, because I was in Arizona, that was in New York, right? 9/11 was a TV show.
Yeah.
Like, and that's, I mean, I don't want to sound insensitive, but it was a TV show, you know?
Yeah.
And I went to school, and just, I remember I got up out of a seminar that was the politics of revolution, because I was studying political science as part of my pre-law thing. And they weren't even talking about this thing that just happened. Like, no one mentioning it. I'm like, that's weird. And I'm like, I'm done with school. I get up, walk out, right? Didn't withdraw, nothing. Yeah, it was so weird. And like, I would kill my son if he did this at this point, right? He's in college right now. He's a senior. I'm like, I would destroy you if you did what I did. But it was the best move of my life. And I would just like pass the magazine rack at the ASU bookstore on my way out. And I love magazines. And there was a photography magazine. I'm like, I'm kind of all right at photography. I can see a roadmap. I found a photography school, and I'm like, I'm going to go to Brooks Institute of Photography and just learn this.
Wow.
And like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And so I went home, told my wife, I'm like, hey, I want to be a photographer. Forget this lawyer thing. She married me under pretenses of me being a lawyer. But
yeah.
And she's like, okay. She's super supportive. Sold our house, sold everything, moved to Santa Barbara, went and like learned photography more in depth, like introducing some expert level stuff. And then I just started a company, and for about 10 years, no, 7, 8, 9 years, shot like weddings, babies, commercials, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And after 7 or 8 years, I was like, I do not. I mean, except for your wedding, of course.
Of course. Right. Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do this my whole life. I don't want to have every weekend booked for the rest of my life.
Oh, I don't blame you.
And so you talk about rush to fail. That was like, ultimately, like, we were making good money.
Yeah.
Like, good living, good, perfect little life. But then I realized this is not what I want to do. And I was really worried. And it was like a spiritual matter to me, because I was like, I got to feed my family. This was 2006, 7. All of my friends were getting rich selling real estate or mortgages or whatever, because Arizona real estate 2007.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm done. I got to get out of photography. And all of a sudden just dawned on me, okay, but before you leave, do this. Like, do a depiction of Jesus, just some scenes from the Bible. And I'm like, weird. Only painters do that. It had never been done photographically, at least that I know of, and definitely on a broad scale, right? Like,
where did that thought come from? Like, how did that come to your brain? Did you see a magazine or like?
No, because there was no
nothing to look at, I guess.
Photography. No, there was The Passion. There were some movies about Jesus. Mm-hmm. There was definitely paintings about Jesus for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
But I didn't even think when I was doing it, I'm going to sell pictures of this. It was like, I'm going to do it, get it done. And I did it in conjunction with a passion play known as the Easter pageant that happens in Mesa every year.
Yeah.
And did it as part of that. And I was like, hey, I'll do this. Just use whatever I make for PR. I maintained the copyright as the photographer. And then I did it, and it went viral, 2007 viral, which was...
How did it go viral? Like, who saw it? How did it get out there?
My friend, Cameron Trejo, who's a really good filmmaker, made a documentary of us doing this. Because I was shooting a lot of weddings with Cameron at the time. Now Cameron makes like big commercials and feature films. But this is the beginning of our careers, right?
Yeah.
He's like, dude, I'm making a documentary of this. I'm like, sweet. So he just followed me around, was constantly interviewing me and other people in it. He did a documentary, but also did just like this pretty little slideshow of all of the pictures that we took to some music. My father-in-law is a musician, Clyde Bodden, and he had a producer, Jason Barney, that he worked with. And they put together a soundtrack because we said, okay, let's put all these pictures together and make like a big exhibit. And so we made an exhibit, that like drew a monster crowd, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people eventually. And so Cameron made this slideshow of like 26 pictures and this set to Come Thou Fount, a hymn that Clyde and Freddie Ashby and Jason Barney made, and it went viral. Like viral meaning email lists.
Yeah,
like
this is before Instagram.
Yeah, people just doing big long email lists, and then also it would blog viral. I think it was on like,
oh yeah,
and you could kind of see analytics at the time.
Yeah,
but I found like 10 or 12,000 blog links to it very quickly.
Wow.
And then it just like up, and I got called from a regional publisher called Thezra Book, and then the book went bestseller regionally. Like the highlight of my career at that point was when I walked into Costco and we had an end cap.
What's now, that? Costco, like at the end of the wow.
Yeah, and I was on end caps in some California, Utah, Arizona, Idaho, some Nevada.
Wow.
And it was cranking, right? And we sold like 100,000 copies of that book.
Oh my gosh.
And
we bought one of them. Or actually, no, my mother-in-law I think bought 30 of them, and we got one.
Yeah. Your mother-in-law. Yeah.
I think she paid for your mortgage a couple times.
She did. She's incredible. And so they went viral like that. And then all of a sudden people were like, hey, can I get a big one for my house? And I'm like, sure. And it just kind of like took off like that. But I never thought it would be like the thing that I did. Now, it successfully exited me from photography.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about like falling into failure or like failing fast, failing to success, people could look at that 7 years of shooting weddings and be like, well, you wasted your time doing the wrong thing. Why don't you just do this at first? Well, dude, weddings are an interesting proving ground.
Oh, yeah.
Because, man, you've got like 75 art directors with opinions. You've got...
Talk about pressure.
A lot of pressure. You've got a bride walking down the aisle. You better hit that. If the groom starts to cry and you don't get the tear, like, you missed it. And people are paying thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have time to think about technique. You have to like get ingrained. And at the front end of your career, you're thinking about the light and you're thinking about the settings. You're thinking about all this, but then it becomes like the repetition. And the fact that I was shooting on film, not digital, is each rep cost me about $1. Because the film would cost $8-9 a roll, then about $20 to develop it. So you're just like, you're about $1 a shot. And that's expensive. Those are expensive reps.
Yeah.
And you don't have the luxury of photoshopping them. And you don't have, and so like, I didn't realize I was getting reps. I thought I was just getting tired and wasting my time.
Yeah.
But when it came around to Reflections of Christ, it was so slow and so methodical that that it was in slow motion when we were making it, and I understood that. And then so I kind of put that on autoplay. I had a website, have a manager that does my books. I had a printer that works. He still works for me. I'm his only client now. He's in Northern California. And I kind of just went and did my thing. I'm like, well, all right. I went back to school, finished a degree in actually Russian at ASU. Because, I finished that. And then at the same time, I had a professor I really liked. And she's like, why don't you get a master's? And I'm like, in what? She's like, whatever. And so I got a master's in liberal studies, which is basically reading and writing. Like I focused on creative nonfiction writing. And everyone's like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, I don't know. What am I going to do with Russian? Right now, I'm just killing time because I got a bunch of cash from these books.
Yeah.
And right in the middle of that, I get a call from Glenn Beck's company out of the blue. And they're like, hey, Glenn saw your work. He'd love to meet you. And Glenn at the time was on Fox, like had the biggest cable news show.
Oh, yeah. He was huge.
Ever in that time slot. Yeah. And so I flew out to New York, met Glenn, who was just knew me as a photographer, but had no idea that I'd been studying like communist history and all this stuff. So we talked about photography for about 30 seconds. And then we talked about everything I just studied in my master's degree.
Wow.
And
Are you kidding me? That's crazy.
And then I get out of the blue, he invites me back. He's like, I'm moving to Texas next week because I'm leaving Fox. Come visit me in Texas. I'm like, all right, cool. We're buddies, like, and have an agenda. The Texas trip stretched into like an 8-day trip. He kept extending as like execs from his company would fly in from New York and interview me. And then I had a job offer and I had to go. I wasn't done with my master's. Like I still had like 2 months left in my master's. I was middle of the semester. And so I had to go negotiate with all of my professors. And the negotiation went like this. It was like, hey, I just got a job offer, and I slide it across the table. And it was like low 6 figures. And all my professors are like, these are liberal arts professors, right? They're not in the business school.
Yeah.
These are like English PhDs.
Yeah. And they're like, on it for the money. Yeah.
They're like, son of a gun. I go, would you have me not take this? And they're like, absolutely, take it. So I just cut deals with all of them. Like one of them, they're like, hey, I just got nominated for Teacher of the Year. Will you write your story and submit it to the nomination committee? So that was awesome. One. I love and that was my final assignment. And then other ones I just like had to write. All these professors were like, oh, I had a successful student. I'm going to use this. So I cashed that in for my master's degree. I didn't have to do the last 3 months, and I went to Texas to the job. But
man,
like long story short, compressing, right? So I was with Glenn for 3 years. We're good friends, still good friends. I left because it was just, I learned so much. I produced TV. They send me off to like tornadoes to go report on stuff. I produced albums. Was everything except for politics, which is great. I'm happy about that. But also I saw like a lot of inner workings of like politics as people would call him, knowing that he would go to air with stuff. He'd get like high level calls. But I did that. And after 3 years, I'm like, I'm not a very good dad right now. I'm all consumed. I'm whatever. And so I got this other job offer to go run marketing for a company. They said you can move to Wichita or Provo. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to Wichita. And so I moved from Dallas to like up in Hobble Creek Canyon, Utah, lived next to my parents who were there, who had just moved there from Arizona, which is why I took Utah. And lived there for 6-7 years and just tanked like 4 businesses, dude. I was like, Jonah, right? So every time
I did not know this part of the story. I'm really curious about this.
We would have funding, we would have experts, we would have greatest team set up. Like all green arrows. Like failure was not even anywhere in the cards in any of these companies.
Yeah.
And they would all just be like, and finally I'm like, listen, throw me off the boat. Like, feed me to the freaking whale. This is my fault. I'm not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, in my heart of hearts, I knew that I was put on earth to be an artist.
Yeah.
I was put like, I had this purpose, and it had been like, and I really underplayed the power of what happened in my life when I made Reflections of Christ, right? Like I didn't tell that part of the story well, but it cleansed me to a level and like put me through a fire that was so important, and it just changed. It clarified everything in my life. And then when I ran from that, I don't think going to Glenn was running from it. I think that was an important part of my story, but for the next 4 or 5 years after Glenn, I ran from that. And I tried every freaking thing possible. Like one company, we had all the funding, we had everything, dude. My crowning achievement at that company was, I'm like, we need to get a hot air balloon. And like we bought a hot air balloon and like hovered it over the Phoenix Open and stuff and got a bunch of free airtime. But and that should have worked. Oh, there was one was I was running marketing for a solar company.
Okay.
And then a related industry, I was helping marketing for an alarm company. Another one was a startup with like oral hygiene products that like they had a patent, they had a great story, that everything. And I think that one's actually doing okay now. And the solar company actually got sold and scraped off in an acquisition.
Oh,
yeah. But then another one was like another dental company. And dude, and the whole time I'm just like itchy. I'm feeling kind of pregnant. I'm like, I'm supposed to do something. Like there's birth inside of me.
Yeah.
And finally, like after all of those were just like crash and burn, crash and burn, crash and burn. I'm like, fine, I'll be an artist. And that's when I had it. I just knew that I had to get out of it. We're living on 50 acres in Hobble Creek Canyon. It was freaking Garden of Eden. It was beautiful.
Whoa, you had 50 acres?
Yeah, I had a lease purchase on this property.
Whoa.
That like my dad had purchased, and he's like, hey, if you want to do it, like here's your price, lease purchase. And we were working toward completing that. Probably could have stretched and gotten it done. Like I know we could have stretched and gotten it done. But late, and I was leasing it at the time.
Yeah.
But it was just, dude, a stream running through it, a big dog, like clear air. It was insane. And the house was beautiful. And I just knew it wasn't right. I was like, I'm too comfortable. Like I've got no friction. I've got no gravity to fight up against here. And so I couldn't make art. And I knew that I was supposed to be an artist. And so we moved to Nashville. I have a daughter that's a musician who was only 12 at the time. So like, she was like, yeah, I want to be a musician. So, but that's not the reason. You don't go move for your 12-year-old kid unless they're freaking Liberace, right? And she's not Liberace. I don't know why I picked Liberace, but I was just thinking like of a Prodigy, right? But we moved to Nashville, and I finally had that creative friction that I needed to make more art, and just to say, this is who I am. Like I make art, and then I just defend my art all the time. It's come like the art is almost secondary now to like just trying to paint a picture of the value of Christian living, the value of Christian ethic, of the Christian ethic, and just the power that Jesus can play. It's the role that Jesus can play in a normal life. And my art just kind of goes along with that. And as I stick to my message, then new art just kind of flows, right? But it wasn't a traditional or easy path, but
yeah,
I'm thankful for it. Okay, that was a really long answer.
Oh my gosh, I love it. No, and I have several questions as I'm listening to your awesome story. No, this is good. It's funny when you did move, and again, this is me from a distance, just kind of outside looking in. I did think actually that you moved really solely for your daughter, and I was like, holy smokes, who does that? Because I know your daughter, by the way, is an incredible musician. Yes, you may not be Taylor Swift necessarily right now. Who knows? Maybe one day.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think you want her to become by any means Taylor Swift either. Although my daughter would disagree with that statement. But she's super good though. Like, I mean, she's on Spotify, listen to her music, and it's Liv.
Ava Liv.
Ava Liv.
Okay. Yeah, Ava Liv's music. So just Ava. But
yeah, Ava, she's super talented, and I've seen some videos of you guys. Like, do you still go out with her like on the streets of Nashville and have her just go
when she lets me? The funny thing is, like, she loves to she's 17. She loves to babysit. She just likes kids. And so people pay her, whatever you pay babysitter, 15, 20 bucks an hour, whatever. Yeah. They make a killing now. Yeah. But when she goes and plays on the street, she makes $65 an hour on the street. I'm like,
no way.
Not joking.
I
Franklin,
did not
Tennessee.
know it paid that well. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And so she'll go out when she needs cash or she wants to buy an outfit or something. She'll just get her guitar and go out. But for the first 3 years of it, she wasn't confident enough on the guitar. And so I'd go
Yeah.
play for her. She does better when I'm not sitting there because people probably think this old man's pimping out their child and stealing the money when I'm sitting there. She makes
Right.
more money when she's alone. But so now when I
Wow.
go out, it's like emotional for me. I love playing for her because I know that those times are like that little era is coming to a close.
Is
Because
it?
now she's more professional. She signed a deal. She's like a little more professional now. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like a special occasion. It's nostalgic already when I get to play for her.
Yeah.
But until about 6 months ago, I got to play for her a lot, and that was fun.
Yeah.
I like
And
that.
that's that, man, I love that. So but it's cool that obviously it worked in several different ways. It doesn't have to be just for this one purpose. Like there's,
Yeah,
I'm sure, multiple factors that go into you moving or anyone moving for that reason. But it's cool to see, yeah, her thrive, obviously being in the right place. But I'm curious because I mean, you are a rare breed that can I guess see something before it like a visionary, right? Like you absolutely, without a doubt, have vision because I think every artist,
I
incredible
appreciate
artist,
that.
has to have that vision, right? And so, but it's interesting though, like in your life, how do you make these big life changing, life altering decisions? Just it almost seems like on a whim. Like how do you describe, I guess, the process, and then how does your wife go along with it? That's the other thing I'm very curious to hear
Bless
about
her
because
heart.
it's crazy. Like it seems like your decisions are fairly yeah, like quick on a whim kind of a
They
thing.
are.
So how do you describe that?
There is a feeling that I've learned to recognize, right?
Mhm.
Like a question mark that appears like within me, um, that'll happen occasionally,
Mm.
where it's just like an itch that I can't scratch. And I know that it's like a real question that I have to pursue the answer to.
Mm.
And it feels like a natural consequence of my own desires, right? It's like, oh, this is just me wanting to. But the more I scratch and the more I dig, I'm like, no, this is deeper. This is real. And
Mm.
so when that happens, I'm like, buckle up. Like the only way I'm going to have peace and closure is to lean into that question really hard. Like I went to Vanderbilt Divinity School for a while when I was here because somebody mentioned it to me. I did no research on it. I'm like, I recognized the question. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to divinity school, I guess. And like with all the would-be preachers of America.
Yeah.
And, I popped an Adderall, wrote 10,000 words and get, and got accepted, whatever. And
Wow.
went there for a while just because I recognized that question, right? And that to me, I had it when I left Arizona. I had it when I left Texas. I had it when I left Utah. And my wife, God bless her. I think a lot of it goes to her dad. Her
Mm.
dad's a great guy. Clyde is a wonderful man. Tara's parents were divorced when she was about 11, and she went and lived with her dad.
Mm.
And he is very similar in that he'll be like, no, this is where I feel like I need to go. But he fought through some definite, like post-divorce, like financial and just mental health crises, right?
Yeah.
But he was a fighter, and there were times where she and he had nothing, and she was like helping pay the bills.
Wow.
But now he's like a multimillionaire. But there was like this.
Wow.
And so I think her life with him prepared her for a life with me. And I think we've probably had our downs have not been as deep.
Yeah.
But the ups and downs, she's flowed with them pretty well. And I wouldn't say she's always like an enthusiastic
Sure.
participant in some stuff.
Yeah.
Like when I started Reflections of Christ, I came home and I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this photographic series about Jesus. And she goes, and it was, again, that familiar itch, that same like question mark.
Yeah.
And she knew I was going to do it. She's like, she didn't get it until stuff was coming off the printer.
Yeah.
And then she's like the one behind me, this one, if you're on camera, this black and white one.
We have that in our house too.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So that one, again, I made it and I showed it to her on the screen and she's like, ah. And then I printed it out and she's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
So like, but she's awesome. So like she definitely is a clutch, right? Yeah. Like she'll pull off and be in neutral with me for a little bit and she won't grind. Like, does that make sense?
I love how you just put that. That's such I've never heard that before, that she's a clutch. Yeah. I thought you were going to say
never
crutch,
said it,
but she's a clutch in the fact that, yeah, she's okay to kind of shift down or up.
Yeah.
With you.
Yeah, she's been cool. That. I've never used that before. It just kind of made sense right there. But
yeah, that's cool.
Man. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. You also mentioned that and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it sounds like you almost seek out friction. Like if there's not friction pushing against you or gravity, I think is how you put it. You feel unsettled. Is that right?
Yeah, I have to have. I can't create in a vacuum. I can't.
Wow.
I can't create. I don't create well when everyone's like sitting there waiting for it.
Yeah.
I create well when it hurts. Or when
like when your back's against the wall, when you got pressure on you, you gotta like perform or it's over, kind of a thing. Like like or you actually kind of seek out those. That's a little weird, Mark.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
I think a lot of
better.
Us do.
Yeah,
and I remember working for Glenn, and he's like, "You're such a masochist." I'm like, I have to have this pain, dude. Like. Because I'd write stuff for him or I'd ghostwrite or whatever. And I'd be like, I just need it to hurt more. He's like, what do you have? Like, so that confused him a little bit, but he's the same way.
Wow.
Like he does better when the world's coming to an end.
Yeah.
He just thrives in that moment.
Yeah.
But I have to have that friction. And when we moved here, my wife she's not the depressed type, right? She'd never had like depression. But when we moved here, it was 20 days after our oldest son had just left on a mission. So rip off that Band-Aid. We pack up in a U-Haul, move across the country to a house she had seen once that turned out to be a piece of crap that we were going to fix up because we thought we were chipping Joanna Gaines, even though I can't even like fix a faucet.
This sounds too familiar.
Oh, you've done this? Is this currently what you're doing?
This is really hitting home right now.
But I mean, honestly, like, and so that area, and then COVID hit, and then our son's stuck in an apartment in Oregon on his mission with, like, and he's calling every day, being like, "Oh, this is rough," and we're like, "Oh, it was hard, man."
Oh.
But at that time is when I buckled down. I said, I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm a this. I'm a that. And just like laser focused.
Yeah.
And my best writing happened right then. And there was a lot of clarity that came out of that pressure. And so, yeah, friction. Friction is good for me.
Yeah.
And friction is good for everyone. Resistance,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Now, the other thing too, and I remember, I don't know if it was on a podcast or I can't remember where you mentioned this, but you've always struggled with like ADD, right? Like you've been diagnosed ADD, you've been on medication for it and stuff. And hope it's okay. We're going into this.
No, go ahead, man. I mentioned Adderall.
But yeah, like I'm super curious. So like, you mentioned like, hey, I'm gonna just like cold turkey it and get off of Adderall or whatever. Like, walk me through that experience. That had to have been wild because I know a lot of people that have ADD and struggle with that. So I'm just curious, what was your experience?
I have a famous line that my wife hates, but she knows it's true. And I'm like, the world likes me better on Adderall.
Yeah.
Like, the world likes me better. I write better stuff. I'm more focused. I'm more consistent.
Huh.
But my family doesn't like me better on Adderall. Like, I was just like, I was laser focused and like, don't come in here and try to tell me some long story when I'm on Adderall, because I'm thinking at 5,000 frames a second and you're telling it to me at 50 frames a second. I'm like, you are in slow motion to me right now, man. And so
interesting.
And so I got off Adderall and it was hard. And I got off Adderall, I think it was right before COVID, right around COVID, because then I got COVID.
Yeah,
I got nailed by COVID. Nowhere to the tune of your brother-in-law getting nailed by COVID.
Yeah,
but I was down. Like had to go to the hospital for a second. Like I got jacked.
Wow.
And I've had like serious like mind. I have had the brain fog for about 2 years, and it's tempting to go back on Adderall. Like for a minute, I still have a full bottle of it up in my thing, and I took one. I've taken one in the last 2 years, and I did it for a day, and I was like, "Whoa, I'm not going to do this, right?" But and so I've tried to like go natural, and it's helping, but really like I'm less effective. I have to muscle up. I have to be like, okay, I'm going to create art for 4 hours today. And if I can do that, it's a successful day. And then the rest of the time, I'm just going to be nice to my family.
Wow.
And sometimes, sometimes it's an either or proposition, like either nice or created art.
Yeah.
But, days where I manage to do both are good days. But like, there's several nootropics that I use now. Like I've tried Thesis. I don't know if you've ever seen that pop up.
No.
There's one called Thesis that I kind of like.
Yeah.
There's Joe Rogan's one called On It.
Oh yeah.
That I have currently. I actually took that today because I had a long lunch meeting and I'm like, I need to focus a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's natural and that's good. And like other old man things that like affect your attention. I'm attacking those one at a time. Like at 39 or whatever, I went and got a blood test and they're like, your testosterone was really low. I'm like, no wonder I'm fat and tired.
Yeah.
And so I went on like TRT, just started taking the shot.
Yep.
And that helped me a lot for several years. But like 3 weeks ago, I decided that I want to just be all natural. I want to find natural cures to everything.
Wow.
So I went off that. And that, again, so I'm like fighting different battles, like trying to get like natural energy and aggression back. I'm such a freaking softie right now.
I would not say you're a softie, Mark. I've seen what you do, what you put yourself through. No. Haven't you like recently like run a marathon or something like that? Like,
I did a marathon.
Training.
The marathon was a while ago, but I tell you what I love right now. I started to like, I got a tonal.
You like those?
Dude, tonal's what's up. It is the best weight training I've ever had since high school.
Really?
Yes. The tonals are unreal. So I have a tonal and a Peloton, and I was doing that. And you can go hard. You can go hard and still be chubby, right? Yeah. Because when you're not, like, but my heart and lungs are really strong, and I had muscles, but I wasn't like losing weight. And so I added, at the beginning of the year, I added 10,000 steps a day, just walking. Which I'll blend with, I'll make it meditative. Yeah. Where I'll just walk and be outside. And dude, as soon as I started doing that, like I'm cutting weight like shoo.
Really?
Just adding the walking. And I don't walk, I walk, I'll take about 120 steps a minute. I mean, when you're walking that much, you get kind of bored. And so your time and stuff. Yeah. And so, but really like, and talking to guys our age, which I probably is your demographic for the show, like that's a big game changer. The walking has been for 3 weeks now, has been a major game change where like I'll walk once first thing in the morning. I wake up really early and I go for like 5,000 steps, which is like 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Yeah. And then usually after lunch, I'll go for another one. And sometimes at night, my wife's like, let's go for a walk. I'm like, cool, bonus. More steps. But
Yeah.
That's how I deal with my ADHD. So I gave you a very ADHD answer to how to
No,
deal with your
yeah, I
ADHD.
didn't think it was ADHD
Um,
at all. I think that's awesome.
but
And I love that you're like, hey, that's another challenge of mine. Like I struggle with this, I want to go all natural. And so the only way to do it is you gotta like get active and you gotta find,
yeah,
supplements and you gotta do education and it's super cool. It's funny, I am like the least flexible person you will ever meet in your life, like I cannot touch I've never been able to touch my toes, I swear. Like
serious?
probably when I was a
And you're
baby.
an athlete. That's funny.
Dude, I am so not flexible. So it's funny, beginning of the year, my wife was like, hey, I'm gonna go do hot yoga. She loves, yoga, and she's the opposite of me. She's a dancer and crazy
Hmm.
flexible, and it's beautiful to watch, but like because she's just so like elegant and flexible.
Yes.
And so, anyways, yeah, I went to this hot yoga place in Knoxville, and dude, it was like one of the coolest things I've done. And you could have never convinced me in 40 years that I would ever be in a hot yoga studio or whatever with a bunch of, goofy, whatever, like a bunch of females, obviously. And I'm,
And like three guys all
yeah,
thinking that the other guy's just a perv. Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, here I am just sweating like crazy. But man, that was a cool experience. Like I kind of got hooked, especially when it's freezing cold. It's kind of nice to go somewhere where have you ever done hot yoga before?
It's funny you mentioned it. I did it. I've done it once. I did it right after Christmas when we were in Arizona.
Uh huh.
My sister-in-law's like, let's go do hot yoga. And I'm like, down. Cause I'd been doing a ton of like hip stretching lately.
Oh, yeah.
Like a ton of mobility stuff because again, like old man problems.
Yep.
You just can't
Yep.
move. And so I'd been like, and so I did hot yoga and it clicked. And I told my wife, it's so funny you mentioned this. I'm like, I go, and we get back to Franklin. I want to join the hot yoga studio.
Did you?
And I haven't joined it yet because
Yeah.
I'm still getting my walking down.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at one. So did you join? Are you like
You
a
know
member?
what? So it was like a month for $40 or whatever. And then right now I'm at that point where I'm deciding if I can be committed enough to do it. It's just trying to fit it in my schedule. But I've gone now, I think 4 times and it
You
really
touch your toes
it's
now?
dude, it's like one of the hardest workouts that I've ever experienced. Like I'm shaking, in there and I mean, it's no joke. Like I could not believe how hard it was, but yeah, you just feel great after, and yeah, it's fun to push yourself, make yourself uncomfortable, do things that are just
Yeah.
outside your comfort zone. That was a good reminder for me because I'm like, man, I talk about doing something that is like my biggest weak point or whatever, physically, and it ended up being pretty cool. So
What a fun way for you guys to be together too.
yeah, oh, it's awesome. Like I could just watch her the whole time because I was like, I don't know what anything you're saying means at all. They're like downward dog and what all these, I have no clue what she's saying, the instructor. Thankfully the lights are pretty much it's pitch black, so I'm like right next to her watching like, oh man, this is pretty wild because she's just doing it like
Oh
it's second
yeah.
nature and I'm just struggling over here. But no, it was a good time.
Dude, when I went to hot yoga, this was my big debate. I'm like, all right. And there was a few guys in the class, a few of them were my brothers-in-law too. But I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to go on the front row
Oh
because
no, I made that mistake. I
how
did that the
embarrassing.
second time and I regretted it. I
But
know
then
everyone's looking at me like, look at this guy.
I don't want to go on the back row because then I look like I'm just like looking at everyone.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go in the middle because that was right next to the instructor, and I don't want to be like all eyes on me right in the middle of the room where people look at the instructor.
Yeah.
It was such a dilemma. Like
I
it
know.
was a lose, lose, lose. So I got in the front row next to my wife, and I was like, all right, I would rather be laughed at than thought to be the weirdo in the back just watching everyone downward dog in front of me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I suppose when I go and join, I'll have to figure my strategy. But I think maybe it's like far edge of the room,
I think
far
so.
edge of the room, middle.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
And of
if
course,
I can
that's
go
always
get
the
that
first
spot.
thing taken, because I think
Probably.
all the guys that are experienced know exactly where to go. But there was a couple dudes that you could tell, like, I actually see them at the gym. And they're like, ripped and they've got life figured out, like
Yeah.
stretching is I mean, as you get older, it's super important. And I know that, but it's like, I keep putting it off because I'm like, no, I'm not good at it. I'm not good at it. So, I'm with you, man. It is good. It's like there's something that it does to your soul where you're like, man, that felt good,
Oh,
just
I
to take
loved
on
it.
my total weak point and go for it, make a
Okay,
fool out of myself.
do guys in your hot yoga class? Because I remember in there, I had like a tank top on,
Yeah.
and then by like mid class, nobody had a shirt on. I was like, all right, this is what we're doing here.
Yep.
Like,
That was
yeah,
me.
like,
I couldn't do it. I was like, I am drenched. So yeah, I
yeah.
just tossed it.
Okay, me too. I was like, is this like an Arizona thing, or
I
because
don't
it's
think
way
so.
more
I'm pretty
comfortable
sure
without a
everyone
shirt
didn't
on?
have a shirt on, yeah, after a while, because you're just soaked, you know?
Yeah, I definitely have to shave my back before I go.
Yeah, I'm sure. Oh man, that's funny. Okay, had a couple more questions for you, man. I could talk forever with you on here, but you mentioned, and this is where I definitely appreciate the artist in you, the vulnerability that you have, and the you have a gift of just being very eloquent with your words and the way you say things. Because it's interesting how the world, for whatever reason, and I don't know, we could get into that, I'm sure, at length, but for whatever reason, it's almost taboo now to like the things that were super normal and common 20 years ago are now almost like taboo, where it's like, you're looked down on if you're you go to church every Sunday and it's a two-parent household and traditional marriage, and all these things are just kind of, it's almost flipped now.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, yeah, like what was it, and like what got you to a point where you decided, look, I'm just going to go out there and just be myself and not worry about all the pushback, because I imagine you probably get pushback, no, from like haters on Instagram. I don't know what's been
Mm,
your experience now that you've kind of gone out there and talked more about Jesus and had those conversations.
I think I've come to the realization, like Christianity, we always talk about it like it happens to us, right?
Mm,
Like I was converted, I was, transcendent moment. That might be the case,
yeah.
but really, like living Christianity is a choice with very real like features and benefits.
Mm,
Like features being like belief in an afterlife, like rules and regulations, ordinances, community, all this stuff, right? You opt into those features and there are benefits. And so sometimes, like when I want to get out of the mysticism of Christianity, which is hard for me because I think I love the spiritual realm. I love the invisible, like can't be seen stuff. Um, but the practicality of a Christian lifestyle at this point can't be argued. There's too much social science that
mm,
says a two-parent home has statistically more well-adjusted kids.
yeah.
Um, families that go to church together statistically do better XYZ. Um, couples that don't have sex before marriage statistically, boom, boom, boom. Right? There's so much social science to back up a Christian lifestyle
Mm,
that you can really go in guns loaded at this point because there's so many people trying to get PhDs that they run out of stuff to study, and so they accidentally end up studying stuff that's important,
yeah.
like those things, um, and I found that like once you plant your flag and you're like, this is who I am, like I'm not perfect, like the I'm a I'm a guy that's gonna fail right and left.
Yeah.
But once you say I believe in Jesus and I'm trying to follow Jesus, and and you're not a jerk about it, and I try not to be a jerk about it, it makes it really easy because the haters just bounce
Mm,
off,
yeah.
you know. And honestly, like sometimes I'll get haters like on Instagram, and their hatred is it's so superficial
Mm,
that I've stopped like debate. I don't debate anybody. I'll just be like, why do you think that? And either they'll say something and end up saying something completely stupid, or they'll just go away.
Yeah.
but I don't fight about it anymore. It's a matter of faith. I say this to my kids. I'm like, listen, in the end, and this comes more down to like brand of Christianity, like fighting amongst religions, which I think is silly.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, I've never seen God. Chances are the person that's calling me stupid has never seen God. So for us to argue about the nature of God, I said, we are two kids on a playground fighting about our imaginary friend.
Yeah.
And some people find that really offensive, but like, how can you fight about faith?
Yeah.
You know, we all have faith in something, even if that faith is that God doesn't exist or Jesus isn't a savior. That's still faith.
Yeah.
You know, and so just deciding and just planting a flag, and it's a lot easier to do when you're an old man than when you're 18.
I agree.
You kind of grow into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's so interesting how, as you age, you hit 40 and you just stop caring. You just really do. And then I think there's like some saying where it's like, you know, when you're 20, you care what everyone thinks, and when you're 30, you stop to care as much. When you're 40, you clearly don't care at all what people think. And when you're 50, you realize no one cared about you anyways, and so you realize you're just not that important, you know.
Dude, that's beautiful.
It's like, you know, we all think we're more important than we are. Like, people actually think about us when they go to bed, you know. And it's like, no, they're just selfish. Like, we're all thinking about our own problems.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that the pendulum has definitely swung in my opinion, where it's like, you know, like the whole woke thing and the whole, like, you can't say anything wrong and you're super nervous to say something, and you get cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. And I really think that now society's like, that was dumb, you know. Like, now we're like back to just stand for something and just exactly what you said, plant your flag, be who you are. And I really think that you get a following naturally without even trying, just for the sheer fact that you're okay with being who you are. And so that's what I love. And honestly, the thing I love about Tennessee, like, since moving here from Arizona, immediately I picked up on the fact that all of our neighbors, first of all, they all came and were super friendly, neighborly, and, you know, wanted to meet us. But all of them within the first conversation mentioned Christ. They would mention, like, hey, I'm not sure if you're a believer or not. This is what we do. You know, this is just, you know, you're totally invited to come to our church. We do this and that. Coolest thing ever.
Absolutely.
And I was like, this is awesome. Like, everyone's just okay being like who they are. And to your point, like, there's no point in, who cares like what denomination. It's just fun to be around other people with similar beliefs, and they're okay being who they are. And it's just it's refreshing. I don't know. Did you notice kind of the same thing moving to Tennessee?
Oh, dude, I love it. People are like, so what denomination you are? They're like, or have you found a church home yet? It's always that.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, I have, but tell me about yours, man. I want to hear about it. And in my family, we go to different churches all the time. I love taking the kids to different churches. Oh yeah, and
I love that.
I love going to my church. We don't miss ours. I love going to my church, but man, I think worshiping with other people is a way to like deepen relationships and realize that like the point is Christianity.
Yeah.
The point is like finding Jesus however you can. And you know, writing non-denominationally at first was a struggle, but now it's so easy. You just eyes pinned on Jesus, and you're just like, and of course it's I interpret a lot, and I probably get a lot of things wrong, and I'm sure like I'll figure out what all those things are with time. But yeah, I love Tennessee for that. It's so neat. It's not weirdness. Around
they just normalize
being a believer.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you say that, because when I was on my mission, it was just something that for whatever reason I just loved learning about other people's, you know, beliefs. And so I'd go to their churches, you know, on Sunday after ours, and we would just make it a point to do it. And I'm sure everyone was like, what in the world
where did you
missionaries doing at church, you know, here with us? But I loved going to different ones and learning about, you know, what they were all about, and always had a good experience. So
where did you serve your mission?
Alaska.
Oh, rad.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so
That's really
I'm
cool.
getting a taste of that snow. I had to remember how to drive in the snow now that we moved out here. All of a sudden, and we were talking about that before the show, like, holy smokes,
So
it's an
funny. There's
adjustment.
a freaking ice skating rink.
Yeah, my kids love it, but and we did too for a couple days, and now we're like, all right, let's wrap this up.
Time to go back to school. Yeah.
Yeah, it's time. Exactly. It's been a full week off of school. My wife's going crazy. But Mark, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. This was so fun. You're always gracious with your time, and love learning about your life experiences and how you're able to turn them into success. And is there anything else, I guess, that you'd want to add at the very end? Just yeah, some words of advice maybe that you would give to your kids when it comes to overcoming adversity that they face. Like, is there any type of mantra you guys have, or things that you tell them that yeah, you'd want to share?
Yeah, there is. I told my kids, kind of coined this last year, around this time of year. We were talking about New Year's resolutions and stuff, and I have a newly married kid, and had his sweet wife Molly with us, and we were just sitting around, and I said, and I was teaching a little like New Year's thing, and I said, I want you to be flexible in your faith, but inflexible in your pursuit of faith.
Wow.
Like, go with the wind. Look into things that bother you. Like, interrogate the questions and realize that some might hurt and some things you might have to put on a shelf for a little bit.
Yeah.
But don't let them snap you. I said, but never stop pursuing, because eventually you'll come to the thing that makes you feel right. And when I was in divinity school, I saw too many kids that were raised in very like fundamentalist Christian homes.
Yeah.
They went to this very liberal divinity school, Vanderbilt. And the first time they ever academically studied the Hebrew Bible, man, these kids just snapped. They all of a sudden, not only were they not the religion of their parents, but a lot of them decided, hey, maybe I'm not a boy after all. Maybe I'm not a whatever. Like, they just snapped. And so I'm like, dude, don't snap, bend and ask the questions, man. And so that's, be flexible in your faith, but inflexible in your pursuit. And that's what I tell my kids.
That is so good. I'm glad I asked that question, because that is totally something I'm going to be chewing on for a while. And it's such a great point, because I think you're right. We don't know so many things. And anyone that pretends that they do, they're probably just really young, because the older you get, the more you realize you just don't know. And I love the idea of just being flexible and just being okay with not knowing. That's okay. Just kind of table it. You'll probably figure it out eventually, but don't be in a rush.
Yes.
Don't be in a rush to fail. There we go. Boom. No. Mark, thanks again for coming on the show. Had a blast.
Thanks, BJ. It's been great. Thank you so much.
I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this podcast. It's the best part of my week. I love learning from others' failures, and let's be honest, failures are way more enjoyable when you're not the one experiencing them in the moment. If you or someone you know has a story or experience to share, we would love to have you on the show. And please do not forget to like and share this podcast with anyone you feel would get value from the experiences shared on this show. Until the next show, remember to fail fast and fail often. Thanks for listening to the Rush to Fail podcast.